Okay, Gospel of John. So far, we have covered several topics: new covenant, new temple, new birth, new survival, new worship, new Sabbath, new water, new bread, new reality, new slavery, new lineage, new blindness, and then new door and shepherd, and new Zoe resurrection, and new position servants, new chain, Father, Son, and disciples, us, new way, the truth, and the Zoe life, and new knowing, and new comforter, or parakletos, new commandment to love one another, even as Son of God loved us, new fruit bearing, and new witness. And we are called to be witnesses, witnessing, or give the testimony. And plan for today, presentation 34 and John chapter 18. I want to cover the whole of 18 and verses 1 to 40. And today I want to, these events are also recorded by other three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke. So we bring in those synoptic Gospels and add details to Gospel of John. Until chapter 17 is the great prayer. He prays and he wraps up his teachings. From 18 onwards, it is a direct events leading to crucifixion. So what he was doing is he has completed his teachings from Gospel of John chapter 1 to chapter 17, and very little he taught after this. And he would pretty soon go to cross, and he would shed his blood on cross, and that blood would ratify the covenant, the new covenant. And all his teachings are the terms and conditions of the new covenant, and they're sealed and they're frozen, and the contract comes into force shortly after his resurrection and ascension. And from that point onwards, once the blood is used to ratify the covenant, nothing can be added and nothing can be removed. The terms and conditions are frozen, along with the promises, especially promise of eternal life, and the penalty is eternal death. The stakes are high, the standards are high, the bar is very high regarding righteousness and holiness. So this is where covenant is proceeding. So we have covered pretty much most of the teachings now. Now we see the events leading to crucifixion. And we see the trial and arrest and betrayal. First, we talk about betrayal by Judas Iscariot, and he was betrayed into hands of sinners. And he also made an interesting statement that he who handed over me to you has greater sin. So all sins are sins, but there are greater sins, implying there are lesser sins. And if you hand over Son of God to the enemies, you have greater sin. By implication, if we betray any of the brothers and sisters and hand them over to the enemies or enemy authorities, you are doing a greater sin. Greater sins have greater penalties. That's a subject for another day. But this is pretty much Judas. He made big statements about Judas. We'll see that. And trial by the council. So Christ, Yeshua, Jesus was tried first by the council of chief priests, elders, and the Jewish religious leadership and the hierarchy. They try him, and obviously that is a mistrial. And then they bring him and hand him over to Pilate, the Roman authorities. So Jesus would have a second trial, and Pilate tries him, and that's also a mistrial. So he goes through two mistrials and one betrayal of Judas by his own one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, and if you look back, he doesn't have to do any of these things. He doesn't need to be slapped by a soldier of high priest. It doesn't need to be mocked by Roman soldiers as well as Jewish priests. And he doesn't need to be crucified in painful death of cross and the humiliation that is associated with it. And he doesn't need to go with this tremendous beating, and his flesh was taken out with each of the beatings. And finally, he is unrecognizable form. His visage was marred more than any man. Scripture confounds and gives that statement. And he's almost naked, or probably totally naked, and helplessly hanging on that pole or cross, and he has to die. He doesn't need to do that, but he chose to do that because he's demonstrating the greatest agape love towards us and towards the world cosmos. This is the greatest display of agape love by very Son of God and his Father. Both are equally sacrificing and equally intensely loving us so that we do not perish, but we may have eternal Zoe life and make it into kingdom and make it into New Jerusalem. That is the hope. That is the supreme love. And we see that demonstrated, and he goes through this humiliation. And on the other hand, you see the madness that fills the Jewish leadership, the hierarchy, the Sadducees and Pharisees, the high priest. They go insanely mad. They don't have any reasoning, any logic. They just are bent on doing what they want to do. So was Judas, and he was bent on doing that. There is no ounce of conscience left in them. That's a horrible, dangerous state. And we see that display of madness. So these verses we are going to cover, most of you are very, very familiar. Perhaps you go through them before the Passover. So yourself, you're personally familiar, or might have had some teacher teach you, or several teachers teach you over many, many years. So I'm pretty sure that these are very known verses. So I'm going to cover lots of stuff tonight, but I go fast so that we get the high level insight into what is happening, how each of the trial is a mistrial. And I hope you would catch at least one or two points that you did not know before. That's my hope in bringing these other three gospels into the discussion. Let's launch into the chapter 18, verses 1 to 5. When Jesus had spoken these words, he went forth. Those words are the prayer of chapter 17. After finishing that prayer, he went forth with his disciples over the brook Cedron or Kidron, where was a garden into which he entered and his disciples. Here, Jesus has establishing a pattern that he would often go to garden and stay there with his disciples. So that pattern helped Judas to come and betray him. And Here, I want to make one theological statement. Since we are deep into Gospel of John, we are almost about to wrap up. There are two natures in Yeshua Jesus Christ. He was Son of God and Son of Man. As a man, he suffered pain. As a man, he has to 100% rely on God as a suffering servant. But as Son of God, or God in flesh, he knew all these things. He is omniscient, and he knew exactly what was happening, even though he was not physically present. When Judas goes and strikes a deal with the religious hierarchy and comes as innocent and participates in the Passover symbols partaking, he knew what was happening. That's why he was able to make a statement. And Son of Man, Judas betrays, because he was a man. Judas betrays him into hands of Jews. But as a Son of God, his focus was to lay down his life. He has authority from Father to lay down his life and take back the life. So there are two parallel layers that are going on in him. He's fully God and fully man. So those statements sometimes belong to God portion or man's portion. The primary focus of John, when he wrote Gospel of John, is to present him as Son of God or God in flesh. So he omits other details, but today we are going to get the details from other three Gospels so that we have a holistic view of these mistrials. So he goes to garden with the disciples, and Judas also, which betrayed him, knew the place. So there's a pattern. For Jesus oftentimes resorted thither with his disciples to go to the garden. And Judas then, having received a band that is believed to be a Roman battalion of at least 600 men, or that can be less or more, it's a term used, band of men and officers from chief priests. So you have Roman soldiers and also soldiers from chief priests. Chief priests are Sadducees and Pharisees. There are two major sects, Sadducees and Pharisees, come thither with lanterns, torches, and weapons. So they come with all this weaponry, well prepared, lots of soldiers. They're coming as if to catch what? A person who is a traitor, a person who is practicing sedition, and it is like insurrection. So they want to catch him red hand and catch him with all the weaponry. It's like your modern commandos with automatic weapons. So they came with that background. There are two charges from Jewish leadership on him. One is the charge of blasphemy, and second is the charge of insurrection, that is rebellion against Roman rule. So let's go further. And Sadducees, Pharisees, all these guys there, and Roman army, everybody comes to arrest him. Basically, the charge was sedition. And then Yeshua knew all these things that are happening on the background and why they are coming with such a huge army to arrest one man. And here, Acts 5:17 is a side note. Then the high priest rose up, and all that were with him, that is, chief priests, which is a sect of Sadducees, and were filled with indignation. So Sadducees are supposedly chief priests. Wherever we see the chief priest, they are Sadducees. In some verses, the scripture mentions them as Sadducees, and other places, chief priests. So that's a side point. And then Jesus, therefore, knowing all things that should come upon him, went forth and said unto them, whom seek ye? So now he's presenting him as omniscient Son of God rather than Son of Man. He knew all the things that are orchestrating and around him, all the conspiracies that went in, all the plotting by the different entities. So he knew it all. And then he went forth and asked them, "Who seek ye?" They answered him, "Jesus of Nazareth." And Jesus said unto them, "I am he." And Judas also, which betrayed him, stood with him. So he plainly goes forward as a true leader of his disciples. There are 12 disciples, now reduced to 11, 11 and him, and he is the true leader. And he steps forward. He does not run away like a hireling, and he stands for his sheep. Betrayal by Judas. Judas' story is picked up by other gospels in more details. John somehow skips much of the details. Let's get some details of what Judas is doing. Judas did not decide on the day of Passover, on the evening when he was partaking bread and wine. That was not the time he decided to betray Son of God. That was way back. He was already plotting. Let's see Mark 14, verse 10 to 11. And Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went unto the chief priests, that is Sadducees, to betray him unto them, that is, betray Christ. And when they heard it, they were glad and promised to give him money. Isn't it? Money, love of money is root of all evil. The all evil is being unleashed now. And he sought how he might conveniently betray him. So he made an agreement. He accepted for the money, such a money. He's going to get him, and he's waiting for opportune time. And this is interesting. Why opportune time? Why not immediately? Luke 22, verses 1 to 6. Now the feast of unleavened bread drew nigh, which is called Passover. So this is few days before the actual Passover. And sometimes unleavened bread is also called Passover in a broader sense. And the chief priests and scribes sought how they might kill Yeshua Jesus, for they feared the people. This is an interesting thing that you see. They feared people because there are a good section of people, they still believed in Christ, whether fully or not, but they are convinced, looking at his miracles and the signs, they knew that he is a godly man. And if they want to do it publicly, try to hurt Son of God, these people would come and instantaneously kill everybody. You know, it's like India. Like if somebody comes into an accident, and if a truck hits the car and car guy gets injured or die, it's always big guy that is at wrong, and they will burn the truck and beat him to pulp, the driver. So there's an instant justice. They don't wait for police. They don't wait for cops. Similar is the mindset of the mob there. They would just instantaneously rise up and kill. So they're afraid of people. So that is interesting that scripture tells us they're afraid of people. These are cowards. They do the cunning work behind the scenes, but themselves, they cannot face the truth or face the people. They are afraid. They're good at manipulation, for they fear the people. Then entered Satan into Judas, surnamed Iscariot, being of the number of the 12. So Satan entered. This is the most dangerous thing that can happen to a person. All the hedges are broken. Devil enters into him. And he went his way and communed with the chief priests and captains, how he might betray him unto them. And they were glad and covenanted or agreed to give him money. And he promised and sought opportunity to betray him unto them, when he will betray, why an opportune time. Verse 6 is a very interesting verse. And he promised and sought an opportunity to betray him unto them, to hand Jesus to them in the absence of multitude. This is the reason. The multitude would rise up and kill everybody. They don't care. Only people who can control this unruly mob are Roman soldiers. But high priest and these guys, they can't do anything. They're afraid of the multitudes. So they want a convenient time when multitudes are not there. Privately, I will hand him over to you. Then you give me my money. Money. And continuing betrayal, Matthew version. And then one of the 12 called Judas, this is Matthew 26, verses 14 to 16. Then one of the 12 called Judas Iscariot went unto the chief priests and said unto them, what will you give me? He is bargaining, and I will deliver him unto you. And they covenanted with him, or agreed with him, for 30 pieces of silver. And from that time he sought opportunity to betray him. This is well prophesied in the Old Testament, one of the messianic prophecies. It mentions 30 pieces of silver. And we'll continue how the betrayal by Judas went. Matthew 26, continuing verses 20 to 25. Verse 20, Matthew 26. Now when the even was come, he sat down with the 12. And as they did eat, this is Passover symbols, he said, verily I say unto you, that one of you shall betray me. Here, Son of God is omniscient in the sense he is aware of all the agreements Judas already made. Judas Iscariot with the religious leadership, or Bible calls them Jews. Now, the word Jew is used for the religious hierarchy. Doesn't mean every Jew. If you take, most of the disciples are Jews, and Christ himself came from tribe of Judah. So you must understand Jews as being applied exclusively for those religious leadership. So when we come back to the verse 21, as they did eat, he said, verily I say unto you, that one of you shall betray me. And they were exceedingly sorrowful, all the disciples, and began every one of them to say unto him, Lord, is it I? And he answered and said, he that dips his hand with me in the dish, the same shall betray me. And he makes this important statement, a profound statement. It's a sweeping statement. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe unto that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It had been good for that man if he had never or not been born. It's a mind-boggling statement that he makes about Judas. Then Judas, which betrayed him, answered and said, Master, is it I? When his turn came, he also asked, thinking that Christ do not know about all the agreements he made already. And Christ replied, thou have said it. Thou have said it. Now the Judas, the statement, it has been good for a man, that man, if he had never been born, it's a frightening statement. It's most likely his name would be blotted out of the book of life of Lamb. And by extension, Judas is an important instruction to us. When church goes underground, when Matthew 24 events roll out, church goes underground. There is a heavy persecution. There is image of the beast being enforced. And at that time, the brother would betray brother, and they will hand them, or the brethren, to the authorities. It's the same act which Judas did, either for money or for fear. The parents would rise up against their children and hand them over to authorities and get them killed. And the children also, in some cases, rise up against parents. And brother would betray brother, and mother-in-law would betray daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law would betray brother-in-law, mother-in-law. All these things happen, and everybody that would hand over a brother or sister to the authorities, they are in the same danger like Judas, whatever his fate. Because Christ said, if you persecute one of these, you are persecuting me. That's how the chain works. When Saul, that is Apostle Paul, before he became Paul, when he was persecuting, he was knocked off the donkey. What Christ told him? Why are you persecuting me? Actually, Paul was persecuting the brethren, but Christ identifies him as persecuting him, not the brethren. So that's how the things work, and it's a warning for us. And he also told Pilate that it is a greater sin. All your normal sins are sins, but if you hand over your brother or sister to the enemy camp, you are committing a greater sin, which implies a greater punishment. So let's continue Judas. Mark 14, verse 18. And as they sat and did eat, Jesus said, verily I say unto you, one of you which eats with me shall betray me. And he answered and said unto them, that is verse 20, jumping to verse 20, it is one of the 12 that dips with me in the dish. Verse 21, Son of Man indeed goes as it is written of him. But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. See, he's pronouncing a woe. It's a curse. It's a greater heavy statement that he's making. Good were it that man, if he had never been born. So it's being repeated by other gospel writers. So it's a heavy statement. Let's continue betrayal of Judas by Judas. Matthew 26. Now, verse 45 to 50, Matthew 26, we'll start with 45. Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that doeth betray me. Now he's telling, behold, he's coming. My betrayer is coming. While he's speaking, see, disciples or anybody else do not know that Judas is coming with these soldiers, but he could see the omniscience as Son of God. He was aware of what is happening. Even while he was speaking, and while yet he spoke, lo, Judas, one of the 12, came with him, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves, and the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now he that betrayeth him gave them a sign, saying, John does not give these details. That's why we are going to other gospels. He gave a sign to the soldiers, whomsoever shall I kiss, that same is he. Hold him fast. And forthwith he came to Jesus, that is Judas came to Jesus and said, Hail, Master, and kissed him. And Jesus said unto him, Friend, wherefore art thou come? From where have you come? Wherefore are you come? Where did you position yourself? You did not position in me. Where I am, my servants also be. This guy has positioned himself away from Son of God. He positioned himself with the camp of enemy. Where art thou come? Then came they and laid hands on Jesus and took him. So that's the signal betrayal by kiss. And let's see the Mark 14, verses 41 to 46. The hour is come, behold, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. So he makes this statement, and here the Judas comes. The same event is recorded. Rise up, let's go. Lo, he that betrays me is at hand. And immediately while he yet spoke, cometh Judas, one of the 12, and with him a great multitude, with swords and staves, from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. And he that betrayed him has given them a token, saying, whomsoever I shall kiss, that same is he. Take him and lead him away safely. And as soon as he was come, he goes straight away to him, that is Jesus, and said, Master, Master, kissed him. And they laid hands on him and took him. And continuing Luke 22, verses 47 to 48. And while he yet spoke, behold, a multitude, and he that was called Judas, one of the 12, went before them and drew near unto Jesus and kissed him. And Jesus said unto him, Judas, betray thou the Son of Man with a kiss? So he knows exactly what is happening. Are you betraying Son of Man with a kiss, Judas? Because he's aware of everything that is going on. He knows every ounce of fiber in every man, every entity, whether it is spirit or flesh, because he is Son of God. That is the point John is making here, the omniscience. So here Judas plotted and handing him over to the authorities to be killed. So let's continue. Next slide. John chapter 18. We are back to Gospel of John, chapter 18. We are at verse 6. Verse 6, as soon as then, as he had said unto them, I am he, they went backward and fell to the ground. So he proactively goes, who do you seek? When Judas and all the soldiers come and they tell him, we seek Jesus of Nazareth. And he tells, I am he. As soon as he says, I am he, they went backward and fell to the ground. Falling to the back, on back is a familiar phrase that we see at other places in Bible. It is always the enemies of God, the evildoers, the wicked people. They fall backwards. And most of the prophets, when they see vision and when they have dictation from God, they fall forward with head down, touching the ground, and they get the visions. But almost always the evil guys, they fall backwards, as is the case here we see. Now there are some people, they said, show us a miracle, we will believe you. That's a false belief. The miracle signs would never convince or convict an evil, wicked person when he is in this madness. They see this, they went back and fell to the ground, but again they come and try to arrest him. See, they became like blind and mad, and they see shortly another miracle. Then asked he them again, whom seek ye? And they said, Jesus of Nazareth. And Jesus answered, I have told you that I am he. If therefore ye seek me, let these go their way. Let the disciples go. He's trying to protect disciples, and he wants to go ahead because he's the one who they are targeting, and he's displaying the true leadership, not like hireling. He is the true shepherd who lays down his life for the sheep. That's why my Father loves me, because I lay down my life for the sheep. So here we see all the things he said, they are coming to be true as we are witnessing. And that the saying might be fulfilled, which he spoke of them, that which thou gavest me, I have lost none. So this is what Apostle John, he inserts this statement in the story for a very interesting reason. The reason is Christ said in John 17, in his prayer, while I was with them, there is a John 17, verse 12, while I was with them in the world, I kept them in thy name. Those that you gave me, I have kept, and none of them is lost, but the son of perdition, that the scripture might be fulfilled. So here he made a statement, only Judas is lost, and all the 11 are intact. They were not lost. I have kept them. So here, John is telling, we are not that person called son of perdition. We did not betray. So we are part of 11. We are safe. So we are not lost. Even though we ran away for our lives, because the scripture, messianic prophecy, that I will strike the shepherd and sheep shall be scattered. So sheep has to run away. So they all run away after some time, but that doesn't mean they are lost. That's what Apostle John helping us to see. We are not lost, even though we lacked faith. Our faith was small, but we are not like Judas, son of perdition. So we are safe. That's what he's saying. Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and smote the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. And the servant's name was Malchus. So here there's a background for this. And Christ asked them to buy swords and get the purses and get some money and go with, because there is a prophecy that's called, he was numbered with transgressors. There's a prophecy, messianic prophecy, that has to be fulfilled. And in order to make that prophecy to be fulfilled or come to true, he has to do certain things. And he asked disciples to buy swords, and they have to appear like that, so that the verse is fulfilled that he was counted among the transgressors. That's an interesting thing. And that gives important clues about prophecy. Some people think that all the events on the earth, they are just a script. They are scripted in eternity past, and everything goes like that. And God somehow could foresee of the script and tells us what's going to happen in the future, because it is anyway, it is going to happen because of this series of events that trigger one another. It was not true. Whatever God prophesied, it is like he wants it to happen like that. So God takes efforts and steps to make sure that's what is prophesied is actually happening. See, that's how the things work, the prophecies. God would put angels or somebody to make sure what was prophesied actually happens. It is not a prediction. It is a prediction in the sense, but he will make sure it is done. That's what Jesus did to be counted among the transgressors, prophecy. He asked them to buy swords. Then said Jesus unto Peter, put up thy sword into thy sheath. The cup which my Father has given me, shall I not drink it? So the reason he asked them to buy swords is for that prophecy to get fulfilled, not to kill the people, not to resist the authorities, not to block the path to the crucifixion. That is predetermined. He's going to lay down his life. So Peter misunderstood. He thought these swords are for use to kill him, and he runs to the servant, one of the servants, Malchus, and he lifts his sword and he aims for his head. He wants to chop his head into two, but somehow it turns his head, poor guy, and the sword hits his ear and his ear is cut off. We don't know if the ear is completely got removed from his head and dropped to the ground, or still it is hanging with a tiny attachment. We don't know that. And of course, Son of God heals it instantaneously. That is another miracle. They see it. And Peter strikes. And we go to Matthew 26. why Peter strikes, what other gospels tell us, and what is the background, because John doesn't give big background into this. Matthew 26, verse 51. And behold, one of them which were with Jesus stretched out his hand, that is Peter, according to John, and drew his sword and struck a servant of the high priest and smote off his ear. Then said Jesus unto him, Put up again thy sword into its place. For all they that take the sword shall perish with the sword. It's an important statement. Whoever takes up a sword shall perish by it. The history proves it. And this saying God would enforce. Whoever takes up a sword shall perish with the sword. Think not thou I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels? At that time, if I pray to Father, would he not at least send 12 legions of angels to rescue me? Now, if you go back to Judah and Assyria, when Assyria came to attack Judah, and they prayed to their God Yahweh, and then God sends one angel, single angel. He decimates some 80,000 Assyrian army in one go. You see vast number of dead bodies of slain Assyrian soldiers. That's one angel. Now he would have 12 legions of angels at his disposal if he wanted to, if he asked Father. But verse 54, but how then shall the scriptures be fulfilled? That thus it must be. So that is the idea. Peter misunderstood. So it's an interesting, two important statements here. Whoever takes up a sword shall perish by it. And if he wanted, Father could have sent 12 legions of angels. Matthew 26, verses 51 to 54. But Jesus said unto him, Judas, betray thou Son of Man with a kiss? So when Judas betrayed with a kiss, when they were about him, saw what would follow. So disciples saw that what would the next step. Judas came and betrayed with a kiss, and all the soldiers are there. They are ready to arrest Jesus. And they said unto him, Lord, shall we smite with the sword? Even disciples misunderstood the use of swords. They said, like, shall we attack them? And Peter, being that boisterous and emotional guy, he did not even wait for Lord's reply. He jumps, and one of them smote the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. And Jesus answered and said, Suffer ye thus far, stop here, stop. And he touched his ear and healed him. So if the ear has fallen to the ground, he must have taken the ear and put it back in its position. Or if ear is hanging, he would flip it and put it in its place, and it has completely, fully functional ear. What a miracle that they saw it. If you think miracles would convert the human soul, you are dead wrong. They still went and arrested him. Let's go to Mark, what Mark says about Peter. As soon as he was come, he goes straight away to him and said, Master, Master, and kissed him. This is Judas. And they laid their hands on him and took him. And one of them stood by, drew a sword, and smote a servant of high priest and cut off his ear. It seems like he has totally cut off his ear. So this is the numbered with transgressors. That is the background. Why all these swords? Luke 22 gives us some idea. Luke 22 verses 35 to 38. And he said unto them, When I sent you without purse and scrip and shoes, lacked ye anything? And they said nothing. Because previously he sent 70 in batches of 2. Don't take purse, don't take your ration, don't wear your shoes, go and preach. Now he is saying, Verse 36, then he said unto them, but now that he has a purse, let him take it. Likewise his scrip, that is your ration, and he that has no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. So there's a preparation and there's a work from God for each of the prophecies that have to be fulfilled. For I say unto you that this that is written must yet be accomplished in me. And what is that written statement? Prophecy, messianic prophecy that has to be accomplished. And he was reckoned or counted among the transgressors. For the things concerning me have an end. So this prophecy has to be fulfilled. And they said, Lord, behold, there are 2 swords. And he said unto them, it is enough. So they're all excited to use the sword. Now back to John 18. Then the band and the captain and officers of the Jews took Jesus and bound him. They're madness. They're mad guys. They just saw 2 miracles. They fell backwards. And also they saw the ear, put it back. No bleeding, no stitches, no 10 days waiting, no bandages. Just instant healing. And led him away, verse 13, to Annas. Annas first, for he was father-in-law to Caiaphas, which was the high priest that same year. So they have a rotation system. They're not following the scripture. Once the high priest is there, he is high priest until he dies. But here they have a rotation system, probably for power struggle. And this year, Caiaphas was the high priest, and his father-in-law was Annas. Annas was also a high priest, maybe some other years. So Annas was also referred to as high priest by his soldiers. So he was brought to his Annas, high priest. Now Caiaphas was he which gave counsel to the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. So Caiaphas was the high priest that year. He made a prophetic statement that one man should die for the people. So here is what we learned about in John 11 about this Caiaphas making this statement. John 11 verses 47 to 53. This Caiaphas is an interesting guy. Then gathered the chief priests, that is Sadducees, and the Pharisees, a council, and said, what do we do? For this man does many miracles. So they knew. If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come take away both our place and the nation. And one of them, named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, ye know nothing at all. Now consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation should perish not. And this he spoke not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for that nation, and not for that nation only, but that also he should gather together in one the children of God that was scattered abroad. And then from that day, they took counsel together to put him to death. So the Caiaphas is moved perhaps by God to make this statement. Caiaphas is not a good man. He is not a clean man. He is a very wicked person. And he agreed and took counsel to put Christ to death. But sometimes, even from wicked, evil people, God would just move them to make a statement to fulfill his purposes. So he also prophesied about Christ. He will die for the nation. Isn't it interesting? Balaam was a wicked man, but God would force him to speak only good things about Israel. He was not able to curse Israel. See, there are instances where God would use even the wicked people to make a statement. We see this more in with Pilate also. So that is about Caiaphas. Caiaphas which gave. So Annas first was his father-in-law of Caiaphas. So they would bring Jesus to Annas, and then they will take Jesus to Caiaphas. So we'll talk about Annas, what he does. And Simon Peter followed Jesus. So did another disciple, believed to be John. And that disciple was known to the high priest and went in with Jesus unto the palace of the high priest. So they're going, taking him to high priest, but they present him before Annas first. Verse 16, John 18. But Peter stood at the door outside. Then went out that other disciple, which was known unto the high priest, and spoke unto her that kept the door, and brought Peter in. So the doorkeeper was a woman, a lady. They have more equality, just like America. They have woman guards as well as men guards. Isn't it interesting? Then said the damsel, that is lady, or a girl, that kept the door unto Peter, Are you thou also one of this man's disciples? And he said, I am not. So this is first denial of Peter, and we see two more denials. Then the prediction comes true that he will deny Christ 3 times before the cock crows twice. And the servants and officers stood there, who made a fire of the coals, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves, and the Peter stood with them and warmed himself. And the high priest then asked Jesus of his disciples, of his doctrine. Now, for this statement to understand, you should have that background, that they already prepared the grounds to try him under sedition or insurrection. So they already made the decision to kill him and try him under sedition. So he's trying some excuse that he may find something in his words, so that he can catch those words and try him for sedition. That was the background. So he's asking, who are your disciples, and what are your teachings? And if Christ were in real insurrection, he will do it in secret, right? He will gather people, gather arms, gather swords. It is no more public. That's what the insurrection happens. And all of a sudden they come and attack and take over the government or topple the existing government. That's how it happens. But here is the contrast. Verse 20, Jesus answered him, I spoke openly to the cosmos, the world. I ever taught in the synagogues and in the temple, whither the Jews always resort. In secret have I said nothing. It was all public speaking. It was all public discourse. Nothing in secret, no whispering in ears, no secret anything, no secrecy, no secret initiations. It's all public ministry. Isn't it interesting? Everything is public. People heard that all through, in synagogues, in temples, and other places where Jews were. They all heard, me in secret have I said nothing. This is interesting and important statement. This will be useful for us at some other time. Verse 21, why ask thou me? Ask them which heard me what I have said unto them. Behold, they know what I said. You have witnesses, people heard. You are not going to believe me whatever I tell you, because you already made up your mind to try me and to kill me. But ask them if you want to know my teachings. There's no point in asking me. Now there is a saying, most of us know, if somebody slaps you on one cheek, turn the other cheek to them, right? We know that. But was it a figure of speech, or was it given in a certain context and that holds true in that context only, or it a universal statement. There are no ifs and buts. If anybody comes to us and slap, if we are Christians, we should show him the other cheek. Is that true? Let's see how and when that instructions were given to show the other cheek. Matthew 5, verse 38 to 39. Matthew 5, verses 38 to 39. Ye have heard that it has been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on right cheek, turn to him the other also. So what is the context? Verse 38, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. What does that mean? Retaliation, vengeance, repaying evil for evil. That's the context. Don't take vengeance. In that context, he said, if somebody wants to strike you or smite you on right cheek, turn him other also. That means it's a figure of speech, a way. This is very Eastern way of thinking. Don't retaliate. If somebody wants to sue you, take your coat, let them have that. Get rid of that revenge. The revenge portion, get rid of from your mind. That is the context. It doesn't mean it's an absolute statement that you turn your cheek every time somebody hits. Here also, Luke version of this, when he gave that commandment, Luke verse 6, 27 to 29. But I say unto you, which ye hear, love your enemies. Your enemies, don't take vengeance on your enemies who are doing wrong to you. Love your enemies, agape love, do good to them which hate you. Bless them that curse you, and pray for them which despitefully use you. And unto him that smite thee on one cheek, offer also the other. Him that taketh away thy cloak, forbid not to take thy coat also. So this is all in the form of vengeance. He's saying, don't take vengeance. Our human nature cries within us that we have to get even. Don't do that. If somebody cuts in front of you while you are driving, don't get even. Let go. That is the instruction. In that context, he said that. So, lest we misunderstand this and make it a universal absolute statement, it does something very, very, very important. I see it very fascinating. Let's continue to John 18, verse 22. And when he had thus spoken, one of the officers which stood, because he is asking, like, ask the Jews, they know my teaching. Why are you asking me? And when he said thus, one of the officers which stood by struck Jesus with the palm of his hand and saying, answer you the high priest so? So he slapped Jesus. It's very, very much likely. Struck, smite. And the Greek also is more in favor of slapping or hitting somewhere in his face. And if the statement that you always should show the other cheek, he could have shown the other cheek. You hit me on this cheek, now hit me on the other cheek also. Very interesting the way he responds. Jesus answered him, if I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why smite thou me? Why are you hitting me? He's asking. It's an important lesson. You cannot be taken for granted by others to do evil to you. You have to at least tell them, ask them why you are hitting me. Don't show the other cheek universally, but there's a time that's a figure of statement, I believe, that you should not take vengeance and get even with anybody. Now Annas has sent him bound unto Caiaphas, the high priest. Now Caiaphas, he was taken into Caiaphas, and Simon Peter stood and warmed himself, and they said therefore unto him, are you not also one of his disciples? He denied it and said, I am not. This is second denial of Peter. And now is an interesting thing. John does not cover the trial before the council of Caiaphas. So he is brought to Caiaphas, the high priest that year. And interestingly, this is a phenomenon of the shadow and reality coming face to face. I've studied all the shadows and types and the realities. They never come face to face. They live in another time, another age, and they die. And then the reality comes. Now, here, this is one of the very few places the shadow comes face to face with the reality, the very image. The Caiaphas represents the office of high priest under Aaronic priesthood, order of Aaron. Now the true high priest, who is the reality of Jesus Christ, Yeshua, of the order of Melchizedek, comes face to face with the shadow. When I studied this, I had goosebumps all over. What a fascinating encounter of the shadow coming in front of face to face. And Jesus could have said, "You are just a mere shadow of me," but he doesn't. Let's see what the other three gospels portray. This is very important of the mistrial he had before the Caiaphas. So Luke 22, we'll start Luke. Luke gives a detailed of how Jesus was brought before Caiaphas. Verse 63, Luke 22, verse 63, and the men that held Jesus mocked him and smote him, and when they blindfolded him, they struck him on face and asked him, saying, "Prophesy, who is it that smote thee?" They are mocking. They are mad guys. The madness has overtaken these guys. I don't have any other explanation. And many other things blasphemously spoke they against him. And as soon as it was day, the elders of the people and the chief priests and the scribes came together and led him into their council, saying, so there's a committee of all these leaders, Jews, and whole night he was there in the custody, going through all this mocking and scourging. And then he was brought in the morning to the council. And now he comes face to face with Caiaphas and Sadducees and Pharisees, the council. And there's a trial, Jesus' trial in that council. Continue with Luke chapter 22, verses 67 to 71. Art thou Christ? Tell us. And he said unto them, if I tell you, you will not believe. And if I ask you, you will not answer me, nor let me go. It's an interesting statement. Now the sequence of events have kicked in, point of no return. He doesn't return because it is preordained, and he is fully in line with the prophecies, in line with Father's will, in line with bringing many sons and daughters to glory, and he has to go to death and no point of return. So the events and people and the entities are locked in spiritually, so that everything is paved to crucifixion. There's no point me asking you or telling you, answering you or not. It's not going to change anything. And even if I tell that I am Christ, it's not going to make any difference, and you are not going to believe it anyways. Verse 69, hereafter shall the Son of Man sit on the right hand of the power of God. So he is jumping ahead. You're going to kill me, get crucified, and 3 days, 3 nights, I will be resurrected, and then ascended and sit on the right hand side of the Father. So he's skipping lots of events, steps. He's going to what is going to happen for a reason. For a reason. Then said they all, art thou then Son of God? Because he's sitting on the right hands of the power of God. And he said unto them, ye say that I am. This is a way of acknowledging. It's a very fascinating. He said like, yes, I am Son of God. He doesn't say that. He has that very nice way of saying, you say that I am son of God, you are saying, yes, that is true. That's the way, like, he uses other person's mouth to acknowledge what he's assenting to that statement. Ye say that I am, and they have said, what need have we any further witness? We ourselves have heard of his own mouth. Let's continue. 71. So they charge him with blasphemy in Luke's version. And let's go to Matthew's version, Matthew 26 chapter, verses 57 and 59 to 62. And they that had laid hold on Jesus led him away to Caiaphas, the high priest. So Caiaphas, where the scribes and elders were assembled. So he's in council. Now the chief priests and elders, all the council sought false witnesses against Jesus to put him to death, but found none. Yea, though many false witnesses came, yet found they none. At last came two false witnesses and said, this fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. And the high priest rose and said unto him, answer you nothing? What is it which these witnesses testify against thee? He is not caring if the witnesses are agreeing or not. He is not doing the due diligence which scripture mandates for any judgment, especially for capital punishment. You have to make a due diligence that all the witnesses, at least 2 of them should be there, and their witnesses should agree, and you should make due diligence or inquisition into that. He doesn't care. He just hears the accusations and puts all the burden on the accused. It's a mistrial. Continuing, Matthew 26, verse 63, but Jesus held his peace, and the high priest answered and said unto him, I adjure you by the living God. Now he is making big things, that thou tell us whether thou be Christ, the Son of God. So he's trying to trap him. Now he is invoking name of living God, adjuring. See? And Jesus said unto him, thou hast said. Because he took up the name of the living God, and Jesus is answering, thou hast said. That means agreeing. Nevertheless, I say unto you, hereafter shall ye see Son of Man sitting on the right hand of the power and coming in the clouds of heaven. He's even talking about the second coming. Then high priest rent his clothes or tore his clothes, saying, he has spoken blasphemy. What further need have we of the witness? Behold, now ye have heard his blasphemy. So they're charging him with blasphemy. Okay. And he's not supposed to tear his clothes, high priest, and he loses his status as high priest if he does that. It's a mandatory that you would never tear your clothes when the high priest. Anyway, that system was corrupt, and now they're tried because he's telling truth that he is Son of God, and he forced him to make that statement by taking the name of the living God, adjure thee. So now he is charging him with blasphemy. Now, blasphemy, if they want to charge him, they have to stone him by death. So they have to get people, witnesses, and stone him on the charges of blasphemy. They don't want to do that. And people would come and decimate them because of the crowds are unpredictable. So it's a very interesting thing. They don't try this route because they want to make sure that he is killed. So rather they would go to Pilate and Roman authorities and try him under sedition, not the blasphemy. We see the trick, like how manipulative and maneuvering they are this Jewish leadership. They are like snakes. Matthew 26, verse 66 to 68. What think ye? They answered and said, he is guilty of death because he is blasphemed, because he said he is Son of God. Then did they spit on his face and buffeted him, and others smote him with palms of their hands, saying, prophesy unto us, thou Christ. Who is he that smote thee? That's pure madness. Let's see the Mark's version. Mark 14, verses 53 and 55 to 59, 53. And they led Jesus away to the high priest, and with him were assembled all the chief priests and the elders and the scribes. So the next day morning, they would take Jesus to the council of them. And the chief priests and all the council sought for witness against Jesus to put him to death. See, they want to put him to death. They already decided. Now they're seeking for witnesses and found none. See the statement. They found none. For many bear false witness against him, but their witness agreed not together. See, they failed the test of witnessing. And those arose certain and bear false witness against him, saying, we heard him say, I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and within 3 days I will build another made without hands. But neither these witnesses did agree together. So, false witnesses, false trial. And continuing Mark 14, verse 60, and the high priest stood up in the midst and asked Jesus, saying, answer thou nothing? What is it which these witnesses against thee? But he held his peace and answered nothing. Again the high priest asked him and said unto him, art thou Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus said, I am. He's answering, probably because he adjured by the name of the living God. He answered, I am. And ye shall see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of the power and coming in the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest rent his clothes, tore his clothes, and said, what need we any further witnesses? We have heard the blasphemy. What think ye? And they all condemned him to be guilty of death. That's how the mistrial happened. Mark 14, verse 65, and some began to spit on him and to cover his face and to buffet him, to say unto him, prophesy. And the servants did strike him with the palms of their hands. That was the mistrial of the council. The last part is the trial before Pilate. One of the servants of the high priest, being his kinsman, whose ear Peter cut off, said, did not I see thee in the garden with him? So Malchus' relative, probably. Peter then denied again. So the third denial. Immediately the cock crew, probably cock crew twice, before he denies thrice. That was predicted by Jesus. Then led they Jesus from Caiaphas. So Caiaphas' thing is over, unto the hall of judgment, that is to Pilate. And it was early, and they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled. They have to eat the Passover meal. They don't want into a hall where it was not clean of any leaven, so they don't want to be defiled. So they stayed out, but they might see, but that they might eat Passover. That's what scripture is saying. And Pilate then went out unto them and said, what accusation bring ye against this man? They answered and said unto him, if he were not a malefactor, we would not have delivered him up unto thee. Okay. Then said Pilate unto them, take ye him and judge him according to your law. You keep doing according to your law. You judge him. Then Jews answered, therefore said unto him, it is not lawful for us to put any man to death. I don't know if this is a true statement or not. At least that's what they said, like, it is not lawful for us to put any man to death. So it's a capital punishment. For that we brought this man. that the saying of Jesus might be fulfilled, which he spoke, signifying what death he should die. Then Pilate entered into the judgment hall again and called Jesus and said unto him, Are you the king of Jews? Now, John skips lots of details in the trial of uh, Jesus by Pilate. He gives very few verses, but we are going to pick up from other three gospels more details. Why he asked this question, Are you king of Jews? Because they're trying not on charges of blasphemy, even though that was what they concluded. Now they want to try them under sedition, because that's what Romans would be interested in, to nail down any resistance, any rebellion, any sedition. So they changed their strategy. Art thou king of Jews? Jesus answered him, Sayest thou this thing of thyself, or did others tell thee of me? Pilate answered, Am I a Jew? Thine own nation and chief priests have delivered thee unto me. What have you done? Jesus answered, My kingdom is not of this cosmos. If my kingdom were of this cosmos, then would my servants fight that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence. Now, there is a very important nuance I want you to notice. He is talking about his kingdom in present tense. My kingdom is not of this cosmos. Many of us were told that kingdom would be in future when he comes. That is not true. That's a lie. The kingdom is now. The kingdom is spiritual. It is not of cosmos. It is not of physical. It's a spiritual kingdom. You have to seek kingdom now, not in future. The kingdom that is here and now, but in realm of spirit, not in realm of physical flesh and blood. So my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this cosmos, then would my servants fight? And that's what happens when second coming. All these kingdoms would become kingdoms of Christ. Then his servants would fight. On the white horses, vast army would come behind him, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence. Pilate therefore said unto him, Are you a king then? So in a slightly mocking way, you speak about ethereal things which I cannot see. And are you a king then? Jesus answered, Thou sayest, I am a king. So he's agreeing. You say I am a king. From your mouth, the words have come. And I am kind of acknowledging, yes, thou sayest I am a king. To this end was I born. I am born to be king. For this cause I came into the cosmos, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Wow. He came into the cosmos. One of the reasons is to bear witness. He's one of the two witnesses. His father was one witness, and he was the second witness. So he came to bear witness to truth. Everyone that is of truth, hear my voice. So it's a checkpoint. Are we hearing his truth? If you are of truth, you would hear him. If you are not hearing Jesus Christ, Yeshua's teachings, you are not of truth. His voice. My sheep hear my voice and know my voice. Pilate said unto him, What is truth? He's all confused. And here Jesus chooses not to answer him to that question, what is truth? But in chapter 17, John 17, he said, Thy word is truth, Father's word is truth. And the word of Father, or word of God, is indeed Christ. He is the truth. And when he has said this, he went out again unto the Jews and said unto them, I find in him no fault at all. Clean. In fact, Pilate does this 3 times that we would see in other gospels. 3 times he declares he has no fault. He is innocent. Isn't it interesting? 3 times. Let's go to Luke's version. how Pilate tries Jesus, or Jesus was tried by Pilate. This is again a mistrial. Thus, I want to focus on that, the second mistrial. Luke 23, verses 1 to 5. And the whole multitude of them arose and led him unto Pilate. So from Caiaphas to Pilate, how he is presented before Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, we found this fellow perverting the nation and forbidding to give tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ a king. See the words, how they are phrasing to try him under sedition. He is preventing the nation, forbidding to give tribute to Caesar. Is that true? No. He said, render to Caesar what belongs to him, render to God what belongs to God. He did not say, don't give tributes or taxes to Caesar. This is a outline. And Pilate asked him, saying, art thou the king of Jews? And he answered him, said, thou sayest it. Then said Pilate to the chief priests and to the people, I find no fault in this man. No fault in the sense, no fault worthy of death or capital punishment. That is the context. And there were more fears, saying, he stirs up people, teaching throughout all Jewry, beginning from Galilee to this place. So they're adding more lies, a lie to another lie, and another lie. Skipping Luke's version, let us see Luke's version. And Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and rulers and the people, said unto them, ye have brought this man unto me as one that perverts the people. And behold, I, having examined him before you, have found no fault in this man touching those things whereof ye accuse him. No, nor yet Herod, for I sent you to him, and lo, nothing worthy of death is done unto him. I will therefore chastise him and release him. That's what Pilate is saying. And continuing in Luke, verse 17, for necessity he must release one of them unto the feast. That's a tradition. He will release one prisoner to please Jews. And they cried out all at once, saying, away with this man, release unto us Barabbas. Barabbas is an interesting character. He is both a robber and also a revolt. He is actually causing true sedition to the Roman Empire. So, but they want this Barabbas back and Christ to be handed over. The Barabbas is a compound word, bar, Abbas. Bar is son, Abbas is Abba, father. And in a sense, it implies that he is son of God. But he is son of God only for superficial sake. But his works are very different. So we can say he's a fake son of God. So now Jews want this fake son of God to be back, released, and the true son of God, they want him to be crucified. See the upside down madness they have. Verse 19, who for a certain sedition, this is about Barabbas, who for a certain sedition he made in the city, and for murder he was cast into prison. So, okay, sedition and the murder. Pilate, therefore, willing to release Jesus, spoke again to them, but they cried, saying, crucify him, crucify him. And he said unto them the third time, why, what evil has he done? I found no cause of death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go. Here the scripture is very clear. 3 times he declared, I find no fault with Christ. Continuing Luke, verse 23 of chapter 23, and they were instant with loud voices, requiring that he might be crucified, and the voices of them and of the chief priests prevailed. So the voice, loud shouting voice, won the judgment. It's a mistrial. The shouting, if that can change the justice, that is not true justice. And Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they required. He yielded. There is an important reason why he yielded. We see it in other gospels. And he released unto them that for sedition and murder, that is Barabbas, was cast into prison. So he released Barabbas, whom they desired, but he delivered Jesus to their will. It's a mistrial. Let's see quickly Matthew version, Matthew 27, verses 1 to 2. When the morning came, all the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. So he was let into governors for some reason. Matthew uses governor. Continuing Matthew 27, verses 11 to 14. And Jesus stood before the governor, and governor asked him, saying, Art thou the king of Jews? And Jesus said unto them, Thou sayest, as you are saying, I am acknowledging. And when he was accused of the chief priests and the elders, he answered nothing. Then said Pilate unto him, Hear thou how many things they witness against you. And he answered him to never a word, in so much that the governor marveled greatly. So there is no counter accusation to the false accusations of priests and elders. Sometimes it's wise not to speak, not to answer a fool, not to answer a liar. Silent. Continuing Matthew version 27, verse 15 to 18. Verse 15, now at the feast, the governor was wont to release unto people a prisoner whom they would, and they had then a notable prisoner called Barabbas. Therefore, when they were gathered together, Pilate said unto them, Whom will ye that I release unto you, Barabbas or Jesus, which is called Christ? For he knew that for envy they had delivered him. Even Pilate could see there is no case against Jesus. Because of envy, Jews delivered him. Pilate can see clearly. Isn't it interesting? Matthew version continuing, verse 19 of chapter 27. When he was set down on judgment seat, his wife sent unto him. This is an interesting thing. God works behind the scenes. Perhaps, this is my take again, perhaps he wants to save Pilate, the man Pilate, from eternal death. So he is restraining through his wife, through a dream. Now, we know from Psalm 69, some of these guys, their names are going to be blotted out of the chief priests, Sadducees, and Pharisees, because they have done greater sin, not a smaller sin. Verse 19, when he was set down on the judgment seat, his wife sent unto him, saying, Have you nothing to do with that just man? For I have suffered many things this day in a dream because of him. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the multitude that they should ask Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor answered and said unto them, Whether of twain, which of the two will ye that I release unto you? They said, Barabbas, with one voice. Continuing Matthew 27, verse 22, Pilate said unto them, What shall I do with Jesus then, which is called Christ? They all say unto him, Let him be crucified. So they chose the method of punishment also, crucified. And the governor said, Why? What evil has he done? But they cried out all the more, saying, Let him be crucified. So it's a shout, yelling, whoever has a loud voice, they prevail. When the Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but rather a tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude. That's a traditional way of telling, washing my hands. I am innocent of the blood of this just person, and see ye to it. You do the crucifixion. This is an interesting statement. I am innocent of the blood of this just person. I think God wanted him to make that statement, both as a witness, as well as perhaps save that person called Pilate, maybe second resurrection. Because here Romans have no clue what is happening. But the Jews, they knew it. They knew exactly what they are doing. That's why it's a greater sin. That's why when Jesus prayed, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing, I think it would apply to Roman soldiers. Matthew 27, verse 25 to 26. Then answered all people and said, this is a bad statement. Answered all the people and said, his blood be upon us and our children. Sometimes it's so much thousand times better if you shut your mouth than making such sweeping statement. Then released he Barabbas unto them, and when he had scourged Jesus, delivered him to be crucified. So Mark version, and straightway in the morning, the chief priests held consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council, and bound Jesus and carried him away and delivered him to Pilate. And Pilate asked him, are you the king of Jews? That's the sedition. And he answered and said unto him, thou sayest it. And the chief priests accused him of many things, but he answered nothing. And Pilate asked him, saying, answer thou nothing? Behold, how many things they witness against thee. But Jesus answered nothing, so that Pilate marveled. And continuing Mark 16, now at the feast he released them one prisoner whom they desired. And there was one named Barabbas, which lay bound with them, that had made insurrection with them, who had committed murder in the insurrection. And the multitude crying aloud began to desire him to do as he had ever done unto them. But Pilate answered them, saying, will ye that I release unto you the king of the Jews? For he knew that chief priests had delivered him for envy. Envy. Continuing Mark 16, verse 11 to 15, but the chief priests moved the people that he should release Barabbas unto them. And Pilate answered and said unto them, what will ye then should I do unto whom ye call king of the Jews? And they cried out, crucify him. And the Pilate said unto them, why, what evil has he done? And they cried out more exceedingly, crucify him. So Pilate, willing to content the people, released Barabbas unto them, and delivered Jesus when he had scourged him to be crucified. That's what the mistrial is. And John 19, next chapter, why Pilate really yielded to them, not just yelling and shouting. There's one sinister statement they make. Let's see in John 19. John 19, verses 6 to 8, 12, and 14 to 16. When the chief priests, therefore, and officers saw him, they cried out, saying, crucify him, and crucify him. Pilate said unto them, take ye him, and crucify him, and I find no fault in him. The Jews answered him, we have a law, and by our law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God. So now they're also strengthening their case of sedition with blasphemy. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he was more afraid. What if he is the real Son of God? And then from thence forth, Pilate sought to release him, but the Jews cried out, saying, if thou let this man, thou art not Caesar's friend. Whosoever makes himself a king speaks against Caesar. See, they're nailing down Pilate now. Here is a man we brought you on the charges of sedition. He wants to call himself as Caesar. And now you are not Caesar's friend. You are against Caesar. You are indirectly promoting sedition. So they can go to Rome and complain against Pilate. That's very possible, and Pilate is very much aware of that. He's probably convinced that they are going to do that. and Pilate would be dismissed from his position. He would be sent to labor camp, some salt mines somewhere, rest of his life. So he doesn't want to do that. And it was preparation of the Passover, and about 6th hour, and he said unto the Jews, Behold your king. But they cried out, away with him, crucify him. Pilate said unto them, Shall I crucify your king? And the chief priests answered, We have no king but Caesar. See, they have no king but Caesar. Then delivered him, therefore, unto them to be crucified, and they took Jesus and led him away. So even though Roman soldiers executed the act, the full ownership and responsibility of the death and type of death is from Jewish leadership. Last 2 verses of John 18, but ye have a custom that I should release unto you, one at the Passover. Will ye therefore that I release unto you the King of the Jews? Then cried they all again, saying, Not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a robber. That brings us to the end of chapter 18. Just points to recap. Show other cheek was given in the context of not doing vengeance. Judas betrays Son of God with a kiss into sinner's hand, that is a greater sin. Jesus had a mistrial before the council of high priests, chief priests, and Pharisees. Jesus also had a mistrial before Pilate. And the whole chapter 18 begins to reveal to us a supreme agape love demonstrated by very Son of God and his Father. That brings us to the end of the presentation. I'll give the control back to Don.